What is going on, everybody? Very excited for today's video. The ever exciting, ever controversial QB tier maker rankings video. I've got 69 quarterbacks, nice, to rank today. Excited to see what you guys think of how my list plays out. Before we do get started, I want to set the table here with what my QB tiers are. I'm really happy with where I'm at with my definitions of these tiers and proud of a lot of the tinkering and reconsiderations I've had over the years to get to the point that I'm at with this tiering system, that I actually reference these different tiers all the time throughout my different videos and analysis. I really do believe it's a good lens to look at these quarterbacks and what they mean to their team and their likelihood of winning championships as a team with that quarterback. But in your top tier, you have the elite quarterbacks, obviously. But to me, that means a quarterback that almost regardless of roster talent, this is a QB that's going to give you a shot at a Super Bowl. You still need a baseline of competency with the team, but just an average team and an average coaching staff, you should at least have a chance at a Super Bowl any given year with that quarterback. Then tier 2 are your great quarterbacks. These are quarterbacks that certainly elevate things for the team and things around them that you should expect with a quarterback of this caliber. Within a 10-year window, you should get at least one Super Bowl with this quarterback. But unlike the elite quarterbacks, you probably need at least an above-average roster, if not a good one, and maybe a couple lucky breaks in the playoffs to finally get that ring. Then tier 3, good quarterbacks. I always say these are QBs that are worth paying because the alternative is likely going to be a worse outcome for you. And it's a QB that you can win a Super Bowl with, but you're going to need a great team and probably a little bit of luck to get it done. And you're probably not putting yourself in the absolute best position to win a Super Bowl compared to the teams with top 2-tier quarterbacks. So for those top 3 tiers, those are really going to be those QBs that get that franchise quarterback label. But as we get into our next tiers, you're talking about quarterbacks at the level where you're either looking to replace them or you're not sure quite yet in their development process if they are sort of that franchise quarterback or one of the QBs in our top 3 tiers. So tier 4 for me, these are QBs that are fine. Clearly starting caliber quarterbacks, but guys that you just know at their current level of play, you're going to have a hard time winning a championship with this guy. And these can be kind of capped veteran players, in which case you're almost certainly kind of on the prowl, watching draft prospects, monitoring the trade market to see if you can't find a QB in those top 3 tiers. Or these are guys that are like still pretty solid young quarterbacks, but are definitely still developing, and you can't quite say they are good enough right now or consistent enough right now to be considered in those top 3 tiers. So tier 4, as with our next 2 tiers, are all split into 2 different categories, basically saying that they are considered at a similar level, but for different reasons, being the veteran side of things and the developing prospect side of things. But then in tier 5, these are fringe starters, guys that you're not necessarily confident are top 32 guys. Either you're in a tough spot with a veteran that you're trying to get through the year with, or you have a prospect that you're frankly a little more wishy-washy with and hoping for some big leaps and gains from. And then tier 6 and beyond, for the purposes of today's video, this is when you really get into those backup quarterback conversations. Again, you're going to have more of those capped veterans and some interesting prospects as well that probably aren't playing right now because they're not very good, but they do have the traits to hopefully develop into something beyond this tier. So with the board set now, let's get started. We're going to be going alphabetically through all of these 69 quarterbacks. I do ask if you guys enjoy this video at any point, please do take a second to hit that like button. It really does help me out. And make sure you are subscribed. I'm going to be doing hopefully a tier maker video for every position at some point throughout this season. We're also going to re-up my quarterback tiers near the end of this season. So if you enjoy this type of content, make sure you're subscribed. Got lots of other NFL analysis on this channel as well. So Aaron Rodgers, the old man, our first guy up, playing pretty well at age 41. I think this is a pretty easy tier 3 good quarterback, frankly, especially with what we're seeing from him this year compared to last year with the Jets, especially early in last year with the Jets. He's playing good football for the Steelers. He's giving them everything they could ask of him. He's running the offense efficiently. There's a couple boneheaded mistakes on tape, but generally speaking, he's been running the offense like the veteran he is, getting the ball out on time, accurately. He's actually done a pretty good job in play extension. He's also coming off a game against the Bengals where there were some flashes of that old Aaron Rodgers. That's obviously not the level we're ranking him at here today, but still has that incredible pocket presence, ability to buy time, set his lineman up in those have-to-have-it moments where you need a play from him. So tier 3 for Rodgers. But then Andy Dalton, he's pretty close to me to a fringe starter. If we saw just a little bit more from him last season when he was playing well with the Panthers before the broken hand, I'd be more comfortable with it. I'm going to put him as a quality backup, but he very well might end up at the top of that tier. Then we have Anthony Richardson, definition of a tier 5 prospect. He's kind of a fringe starter. Given the draft investment and the unbelievable physical tools, he would be considered one of the 35 to 40 relevant quarterbacks in the league that will be getting starting consideration, whether it's because of their level of play or because of the fascination with their upside. That's kind of what the tier 5 is. So Richardson fits the bill. I don't fully believe in him, mostly because of the durability. It seems anytime something touches this man's body, even an exercise band recently, something goes wrong. I still believe we're talking about one of, if not the biggest physical specimens, plus the arm talent that we've ever seen at the QB position. But even when he's played, so much with the mental side and the accuracy has been an issue for him. So there's still some intrigue with Richardson. I don't think we've seen the last of him starting an NFL game, but it might be the last we've seen of that with the Colts. Then Baker Mayfield. We get to have the Baker conversation pretty early in this video. In recent seasons, I would have put him in the tier 3 good category. But now I do believe, despite us filming this off the heels of his worst performance of the season in Detroit, a lot of missed throws in that game, but he has played spectacular football this season. He was considered the MVP of the league through the first 7 weeks. So many great play extensions in there. He just doesn't, I think it's come around now, but you could see it last year. Like there's a little bit of Josh Allen to his game where he doesn't go down on contact. He's kind of built like a running back. He's really explosive, frankly. Not in a speed type of way, but in the ability to create plays as an athlete. And then you talk about, he's throwing the ball in rhythm. He makes, for the vast majority of plays, good decisions with the football, has good arm talent. He, to me, has turned into the definition of a tier 2 QB. And he definitely has some of that it factor you're looking for, too, that sometimes can separate a tier 3 guy from a tier 2. All right, Bo Nix. Tough player to place, frankly. I think he is week to week right now as he's a young guy kind of developing. I see him kind of teetering between tier 3 and tier 4, frankly, as a guy in year 2 that's still developing. Again, I really struggle with this one. He's either going to end up at the very bottom of tier 3 or the top of tier 4. I still think there's been a lot of inconsistency in his game this year, a lot of overthrows, not a lot of good starts from him this season. So for now, I'm going to drop him at the top of a still developing young player. I think he's a very capable quarterback. That's kind of what I keep coming back to on Bo Nix. But I think a lot of people forget just how young Nix is in terms of his NFL career. I think because he started 60 games in college and he kind of plays a more of a veteran style brand of football, I think we forget that he can actually still get a lot better at this. So I'll put him there for now, and we'll see if I have a change of heart as we go throughout this. All right, Brock Purdy. I know he's going to have some detractors just because he hasn't really played this year and that recency bias kicks in, but I'm still a big fan of Brock Purdy. I know Mac Jones is playing pretty well, and we'll talk about Mac obviously in this video, but it's still Brock Purdy's job when he's healthy. I'm starting to get a little worried about the durability, but he doesn't get enough credit for how well he plays within the timing of that Niners offense, how he throws with anticipation in that offense, and most importantly, he is an excellent play extender in a way that a guy like Mac Jones isn't. He can make up for any play where a guy isn't open, which does happen a lot in San Francisco, but we've seen a lot of spectacular plays from Brock Purdy that he frankly doesn't get enough credit for his creative instinct and pocket feel. Then we have Bryce Young. I still consider him a developing type of player. It's been inconsistent football, to say the least, throughout his career. It's been much better as of late. He's definitely still climbing and should be considered a developing young player. Bryce can just be a frustrating conversation at times because people want to make these firm statements on these QBs early in their career. I mean, we have seen now pretty good chunks of like legitimate tier 3. Even at the end of last year, he was playing somewhere towards the top of tier 3 or even at the bottom of tier 2. I mean, you look at a lot of the tape and the metrics on him in the second half of last year, that looked like what a top 10 quarterback is supposed to look like. This year's been much more rocky. There's been some of that play, but in small flashes. There's been some pretty low lows this year as well. So he's been a frustrating player to analyze and rank and all that stuff. At the end of the day, I can still pretty confidently say he's a fine tier 4 quarterback. He's a top 32 QB in the league. And there's plenty of reason to believe he can settle down, play more consistently, and develop. So he's going to go in tier 4A. Caleb Williams is going to be right there with him. It's convenient that these guys go back to back. Obviously, they will be forever linked. When the Bears chose not to take Bryce Young, stood by Justin Fields, realized the mistake they made, and then got lucky enough to get Caleb Williams with that first round pick from the Panthers because Bryce Young was so bad. These guys are forever linked, and right now they're in a very similar spot in their career. I don't think either of these guys have played better than Bo Nix. I'm not saying in a redraft situation I would take Bo Nix over Caleb Williams, but right now we're ranking these guys at this place in time. And honestly, Caleb is still a long way away from Bo Nix in terms of throwing the ball on time, throwing with anticipation, not needing to see the receiver open before he lets go of the ball. The high-end plays from Caleb Williams, the traits he has, it's unbelievable. You don't need to be a football genius to see them, but the consistency from him has been very frustrating. I know the Bears are on a 4-game winning streak right now as of this recording, but Caleb, even within those games, has kind of struggled in large parts of these games to keep the chains moving, to make the easier throws that he needs to make. He leads the league in time to throw right now. It's been a lot of running around and not even a ton of results from the running around. So I still believe in Caleb Williams. He's playing better this year than he was last year. I'm going to put him over Bryce Young ever so slightly. These guys are very much in that same category in my mind. Just a lot of development still that we need to see. But then conveniently, alphabetical order feeds us our third straight number 1 pick from the last 3 years in Cam Ward. I'm not ready to put Cam in the same category with Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, and Bryce Young. I think those guys have shown much more, higher highs than we've gotten to see from Cam Ward so far. Keyword, gotten to see. This has been the definition of a horrible situation for a number 1 pick. The offensive line stinks. They have no run game. Calvin Ridley's now banged up. It just hasn't been a healthy situation for Cam Ward to walk into. I still very much believe in Cam Ward. I'm very excited to see who they get as a coach. But there's just been too many bad plays in there for me to put him in tier 4. I'm going to have to put him in tier 5 in the prospect category, though I fully anticipate he's going to have an opportunity to climb up relatively quickly here. At the end of the day, just a player we need to see more from. Just a quick pause before we rank our next player here for the sponsor for today's video, Underdog Fantasy. You guys, Underdog Pick'ems are the perfect pairing with NFL action. You are going to select your lineup, selecting player stats, higher or lower. You can go anywhere from 2 players up to 8, and if you hit on all of your selections, you are looking at massive payouts. So you can go as far as doing heavy research to find those 2 or 3 players in the matchups that you feel super confident in how they're going to perform that week. Or you can just do low-level entries, take a couple big dart throws, a couple dollars for a chance at big payouts, and it keeps you interested in any given football game to just make your football watching experience even better. And right now, Underdog Fantasy has a special promo. If you sign up using code TFG, they are offering a $100 bonus match when you play just $5. That makes this the time to sign up with code TFG. They have not confirmed if they're going to keep that promo around. It's a good one. So that's code TFG at sign up. Good luck, everybody, and please play responsibly. Let's get back to the tier makers. Then we have Carson Wentz. He's playing okay for the Vikings. I'm not ready to say he's a fringe starter, that you're really considering him amongst the kind of top 32 relevant QBs in the league. He's certainly a quality backup and going to come in towards the top of this tier, but it's been a very, very inconsistent product. It's drive to drive, quarter to quarter type of stuff. You see some of the inaccuracy issues with him, some of the lack of processing and decision making. The overall lack of consistency has driven him out of the starting ranks. And even though he's playing relatively well inside a very fruitful Vikings offense, I've still seen those issues that tell me he is a quality backup and not someone that should be viewed as more of a fringe starter. Then CJ Stroud. Very, I think, controversial quarterback to discuss right now. I'm going to put him in the tier 2 of great quarterbacks for now as we kind of think this one out. Obviously, the last 2 years, he has not necessarily looked like this guy. And in his rookie season, he absolutely did. I think this is just a player that when you look at how bad the offensive line has been here, he has had the worst offensive line play consistently over the last 2 years out of anybody on this list, and I will not hesitate to say that. I think this is a player where you have to just watch the tape and ask, is he doing everything he can for his team? Are the traits and the throws still there? Does he still extend plays and make things happen and give his team a chance to win? Does he still play well in structure when he gets an opportunity to do so? And for me, the answer with CJ Stroud is still a yes on that. I know fans are starting to become impatient and starting to say that we crowned this guy too early, and I understand all of that. But I do think the tape still shows you that that guy is in there. It's just a matter of surrounding circumstance that's been so unbelievably brutal. Now, there's some things I think he could help contribute to, like, you know, catering to his poor surroundings. I think he needs to get better at blitz recognition and getting the ball out a little bit quicker. I thought he did that pretty well in his rookie season. For some reason, he's gotten away from that a little bit. So there's definitely legitimate criticisms of CJ Stroud. I'm still willing to take that leap of faith. We'll see how this goes as the season moves forward. Because he's certainly not comfortably in this tier. And I could see when we redo this video in 10 weeks, maybe I do finally drop him out of it. But I still can't shake the outstanding film we've seen from him when he's had a functional surrounding system where at a young age and as a prospect coming out, just such a good player playing in structure, at one of the most accurate throwers of the football, making good decisions with the football. But what he has shown as a play extender with just ridiculous ability to hit throws on the run. He doesn't have a cannon for an arm. He's got a very strong arm. But he continuously impresses me with some of these off-platform throws he's able to make. He's just got excellent body balance to torque those hips and put the ball in the right place on the move. So there's still so much high-end play from him in there that I'm willing to stake him into that tier 2. All right, Cooper Rush, don't need to spend much time here. I guess I didn't specify that we do have a tier 7 here that I didn't break down at the beginning of the video. These are not so quality backups. I think what we saw from Cooper Rush in Baltimore, that would fit the bill. I mean, he got benched for Tyler Huntley because he was playing so poorly here in Baltimore. Then Dak Prescott. What a freaking year Dak is having. Considering it's the Dallas Cowboys, kind of under the radar for Dak Prescott, dude. You can make a very strong argument just off the tape. He's played as the best quarterback in the NFL this season. With Joe Burrow injured especially, he is firmly the best field general style of quarterback where he makes checks at the line of scrimmage. He understands pre and post snap coverages. The ball gets out quickly. The way he's able to mitigate the pass rush. Watch that Packers game with his understanding of how to get the ball out quickly and just where to put the ball in a pinch where his receiver is going to have a chance. He's accurate as all hell. He's extending plays pretty well this year. I've just been blown away with Dak's play. I'm as high as I've ever been on him. I think this is the first time I'm higher on Dak Prescott than consensus, and I was heading into this year as well. So it's not just been this season. It's been a growing narrative for me on this channel. But he is absolutely near the top of tier 2 right now. And really with this year now, for the first 7 weeks of this season, this is the first time I've ever considered the idea that Dak Prescott is playing like the best quarterback in the NFL. Again, we're obviously not ranking him there, but this could just be the beginning of him climbing maybe even into the elite tier as the mental side of things becomes such an elite weapon for him as he gets more and more reps into his Rolodex. So often I think we forget that quarterback development doesn't stop when you turn 30, especially for a guy that likes to beat you from a pocket. You are only going to get better the more and more reps you get. And I think we're starting to see a lot of that with Dak Prescott. So, obviously if he continues at this level, if he drags this Cowboys team to the playoffs, if he starts to have legitimate playoff success as all of these tier 1 elite quarterbacks have had, I'm not ruling out that we reach a point in, probably like next year where I actually put him in tier 1. Never would have thought we'd get there with Dak Prescott, but I think the level of play he's at right now deserves that type of praise. All right, Daniel Jones. Tough convo with him re-emerging through the woodworks this season. Quite obviously, he's playing at the tier 3 good level this season. Now, given all of the years we've seen from Daniel Jones, he played at a good QB level in that 2022 season, right, with Brian Daboll and the Giants. They paid him, and he regressed immediately backwards. He's just one of these QBs where it's like kind of hard to trust that this is just who he is now. Again, there's no doubt he's playing at this level. I don't think he's playing at a tier 2 level. The Colts offense does ultimately make things quite simple on him, but he's doing stuff that he didn't always do, sensing pressure, extending plays, pushing the ball downfield. He's clearly playing the best football of his career. If he keeps playing at the level he's playing at, when we redo this video in 7 weeks or whenever it's going to be, this won't be a conversation. He will be a firm tier 3 QB that the Colts will be extending. But for now, because I am just extremely slow to react and overreact in my process. Anybody that's followed this channel knows that about me. He's going to go here for now. Colts fans aren't going to like it. Again, I'm acknowledging he's playing in that level right now. This is more about my process, being slower to react, knowing we've seen a lot of bad football from Daniel Jones, but definitely going to go into tier 4. And you could even argue like he's in the developing tier. It's kind of a different conversation than these young quarterbacks. Regardless, he's in tier 4. All right, Davis Mills. He is an interesting prospect to me. He is. I think he's got a good arm. I talked about how pocket passers get better and better as they last in the league. Seeing defenses better, understanding how to play within structure better. In the flashes we've seen from Davis Mills, it's been promising. It's been preseason, but I still think there's something in there in terms of the arm talent, the way he can at times see the field. Then we have Dillon Gabriel. I think you also have to put Gabriel in the interesting prospect tier 6 category there above Davis Mills. I understand he is currently starting. I don't know that he is going to be the Browns' forever quarterback. I would certainly bet against that. He's not in the lights of a Cam Ward or Anthony Richardson where the traits are really special. Dillon Gabriel, to me, lines much more up with a Davis Mills that, hey, this might even be a good foresight there, where Davis Mills in a disaster situation was drafted in the 3rd round and ends up starting for a year. Then they replace him with someone with some more upside. Dillon Gabriel, kind of, I think, what we can relatively expect in Cleveland. He might end up starting next year, depending on if they like any of these QBs in the upcoming draft. But this, to me, feels like the right spot. You could even argue that he's just a quality backup. He was a high floor prospect coming in, kind of wins that job pretty quickly. And he hasn't played bad. He just, he's a high floor, low ceiling type of player. Honestly, that makes just as much sense. But because he is still young and all that, I will put him in the prospect category. And it should go without saying, but I'll mention, this isn't necessarily saying Dillon Gabriel is worse than Carson Wentz because they end up lower. I can do this and it doesn't change anything about what I'm saying. It's just, I think it's important to kind of categorize why they're in this tier, because there's definitely a split between the kind of stuck in veterans and your younger developing players. So tier 1 through tier 3, it will be as clean as you can count it out left to right and know exactly where I would rank like Aaron Rodgers and Brock Purdy. Once we get into these lower categories that are split off, you guys are smart football fans. You're going to have to understand that I'm coming at you with some extra context there as we go. But Drake Maye has been just on a heater this season, especially these last 3 weeks. I'm ready to at least put him in tier 3. I'm actually going to put him at the top of the tier for right now. I said this on the podcast this week, but if you did the ball-knowing alien challenge, where you take someone from outer space that understands football but has no idea of the context of who these QBs are, how long they've been in the league, blah, blah, blah. You had them just watch the last 3 weeks of football and say, who is the best quarterback in the NFL? Drake Maye will be at the top of that list. He has just checked every box in his development, the accuracy, especially with his footwork. That was a big thing coming out of North Carolina, a guy that didn't grow up going to 11-on-11 camps, was a baseball prospect, basketball prospect, all this stuff. Just an athlete learning the quarterback position, but clearly he has cleaned up the accuracy. The processing and decision-making has been good. The scrambling, the improvisational skills. He is playing like a top 5 quarterback in recent weeks. But again, I have a process here. And for me, even if the tape in the last 3 weeks would tell you he is more than capable of being this guy, I need to see that sample size of him sustaining that level of play before I jump him up. But at the same time, for me in that Bills game especially, he graduated from this tier, the developing tier 4, into firm franchise quarterbacks for sure. All right, Drew Lock. Don't need to spend much time there. The development has never come with him. He is not a quality backup. He goes in tier 7. Gardner Minshew, this is a quality backup. I know things didn't go great with the Raiders last year. Well, it's the Raiders. I still think Minshew is one of the better backups in the league, and if we ever had to see him play in an Andy Reid offense in Kansas City, I think that would prove to be true. So he's a tier 6 quality backup. Then Jacoby Brissett. Hey, Jacoby goes in the fringe starter category for me. He's playing really well for Arizona. He has stepped in complete command of that offense. The arm looks great. And the last time he really had a legitimate starting opportunity was in Cleveland, the year that Deshaun got suspended, and he played like a top 20 quarterback that season. I think that Jacoby should get a starting opportunity this offseason, whether it's a team that needs that bridge starter, or maybe we do reach the point where they want to kind of have a transition season. Maybe they do fire Gannon and they kind of decide they don't want to go forward with Kyler Murray. I don't know that that's necessarily what I'm saying I would do, but I could see it happening. And then Jacoby would be the perfect bridge into a new future in Arizona. So Jacoby needs his praise. I'm excited to see him playing at the level he's playing right now because he's looking good. Okay, Jake Browning. Yeah, that's right there with Cooper Rush. I mean, we saw both these guys in recent weeks out of the AFC North get opportunities and stink it up. I'll put him over Cooper Rush, but don't need to spend much more time on that. Then, the ever-controversial Jalen Hurts. Viewers of this channel know I have been hard on Jalen Hurts over the years, especially this offseason. I heavily pushed back on the idea that he's a top 5 quarterback. We've seen a lot of struggles from Jalen Hurts this season, right? I think putting him in tier 3 feels very good for me still, though the Jalen Hurts truthers that are going to argue for him as a tier 2 quarterback are going to point to his most recent game against the Minnesota Vikings. That anybody that watched my podcast last week, I was raving about that performance from Hurts, where he showed off his deep ball, which I have consistently praised him for, but his pocket presence in that game against the Vikings was unlike anything I've ever seen from Jalen Hurts. That has been a consistent criticism of mine, bailing out of clean pockets and vice versa, like not knowing how to navigate the pressure, extend plays in and out of the pocket. In that Vikings game, it was brilliance, and you saw the repercussions of it leading to production in that passing game against the Vikings. If a switch has been flipped with Jalen Hurts and he just kind of gets it a little bit better, yes, that is a huge trait that could come along that can help him play more consistently like a great quarterback. But for me, it's just one game. We've seen a lot of very just average play from Jalen Hurts this season. The offense has struggled in many times, and those struggles have been directly correlated to oftentimes Hurts's unwillingness to throw the ball with anticipation, to test the defense unless the guy is really wide open, and some of those pocket presence issues that he has continued to show this season, bailing out of clean pockets, leaving a lot of milk on the bones of these passing plays. So again, it's an interesting week to rank Jalen Hurts playing maybe the best game of his career last week, and he deserves total credit for that game. And I know there are going to be some Jalen Hurts fans in the comments pointing to that game and saying, you are nuts, you rank Jalen Hurts way too low. Let's see him sustain that level of play. Then Jalen Milroe, he's a true prospect to me. I know he had some fans in the draft. Look, this was maybe the best just scrambling quarterback I've ever seen. His missed tackle force rate, the explosiveness he has, I think he ran in the 4.3s, and it shows on tape. So much so that I said if he fails as a quarterback, he could be an elite running back prospect at 6'2", 225, and I will stand by that. But everything related to him as a passer, whether it's consistent footwork, leading to accuracy, the processing and decision-making, the fumbles that he had in college, all of it, there's still so much to prove with him. He was a third-round pick for a reason. He's definitely a fascinating prospect to monitor, though. And what is interesting with Jalen Milroe is with how well Sam Darnold is playing, those opportunities probably aren't going to come in Seattle. So he could be someone that ends up on the trade block, or do we see Seattle ask him, hey, do you want to do some of the Taysom Hill stuff with Clint Kubiak that did that with Taysom Hill in New Orleans? He's just a fascinating name. Definitely a tier 6 player, though, for me. All right, Jared Goff. Last year, this was a big narrative, is he playing well enough that I put him in the tier 2 great quarterbacks category? I can't remember if I ultimately did this last year or not, but when we see him get to the playoffs and lay an absolute stinker, that to me tanked him back into tier 3. And I think having him next to Jalen Hurts makes a ton of sense, to me at least, in how I watch the game, because these two guys have unbelievable surrounding casts, right? Hurts, I mean, you guys have watched the Eagles, you've heard the narratives, you know how absurd the combination of the offensive line and those receivers, and now Saquon Barkley makes that. Jared Goff has had excellent offensive line play. He's had multiple great running backs. The play calling has been phenomenal. He's had Amon-Ra, Jameson, Laporta, you name it. We have seen, though, with Jared Goff, when defenses are able to pressure him, there's a downside there. He can make some big mistakes under pressure, and I think there is still a part of me that is afraid that Jared Goff needs that ideal situation for him and his team to play at a championship level. And as we saw in my definitions of these tiers, that's a tier 3 quarterback. So I will put him at the top of tier 3. If he can go through these playoffs and play great and get the Lions their Super Bowl, maybe when we revisit this, I'm ready to put him into tier 2, but that's not where I'm at this point in time. Okay, Jarrett Stidham. We haven't seen much of him as of late. He played all right with the Raiders a few years ago. That got him the backup job in Denver. I'm going to put him as a tier 7 standard backup. Okay, Jackson Dart. First round pick this year. He's made a lot of headlines. He, to me, goes in that tier 5 prospect category. I'm going to put him ahead of Anthony Richardson, but still behind Cam Ward. Honestly, I think between Cam Ward and Jackson Dart, both these guys have shown some exciting flashes and some pretty low lows as well. Dart has been a bit of a turnover machine this season. I will give him credit, though. How he's moving in the pocket and the twitch he shows in his athleticism, he's brought a spark to that Giants offense. So it's certainly not all bad with Jackson Dart, but certainly with what we've seen from him in the NFL so far, paired with how I viewed him as a prospect, I'm not ready to put him up into that group with like Caleb Williams and Bryce Young quite yet. Then Jaden Daniels. So him and CJ Stroud have kind of had similar trajectories a little bit, right? Where they look like these unbelievable QBs out the gate, and then the sophomore slump happens. The team's not as good as around him. And in case of Jaden Daniels, he gets hurt a little bit. Jaden's a tough one because we just need more sample size, and we need to see him get back to playing at the level he did in his rookie season. By that playoff run, Jaden Daniels was legitimately playing like an elite quarterback. You watch how Jaden was playing, compare it to like Lamar Jackson as a quarterback that was just picking defenses apart, mostly throwing the ball accurately, killing you with his legs. So many similarities there. And they obviously ended up going to the NFC Championship on the heels of him playing at that level. This year, even when he's played, he has not been even a tier 2 guy. He's been spraying a lot of footballs. He hasn't been fully healthy, for sure. That hasn't helped, and he's missed a lot of time at this point. So Jaden's a tough guy to rank. I'm going to give him a lot of benefit from what he did in his rookie season, and it's mostly just been accuracy issues, frankly, with some of his struggles this year. I think we saw a large sample size where it didn't hold him back too much last year. Not that his accuracy was perfect. I did say coming in, if there's anything we saw from his rookie tape that wasn't top 10 at the position, it was accuracy. But it was much better in his rookie season than it's been this year. Regardless, though, I'm still going to give him a lot of benefit from that rookie season that was so spectacular. I'm still going to put him over Baker Mayfield, but he needs to get that arrow pointing back up as opposed to pointing down right now, right? I will say within that division, this is obviously going to be a heated discussion. I got to put Dak over Jaden with how well Dak is playing this season. All right, Jimmy Garoppolo. It's been a while since we've seen him. I'm going to put him in the fringe starter category. I don't know how high he's going to finish in this group, but I haven't seen anything from Jimmy that leads me to believe that he's too far different from what he used to be or always has been, really, which is someone that will get the ball out, crazy quick release, can execute a Shanahan-style system. If we had to see him play for this Rams team, I think he would play pretty well. It's just he's a guy that's going to push the limits of attack in the middle of the field, and kind of like a Tua turn the ball over situation. You can kind of expect a Jimmy Garoppolo pick every week, which is obviously not ideal and what is a big part of what gets him in tier 5. But I still wouldn't hate to see a little Jimmy Garoppolo just to see what he's got in the tank still. Then JJ McCarthy, one of the, I think, more exhausting, frustrating discussions I've seen in the football world this year. People are so quick to react, so quick to crown him a bust. And I haven't even been like the most pro JJ McCarthy guy. I've kind of just taken this wishy-washy, let's see approach with him. Look, he's obviously in the prospect category. I'm going to put him above Anthony Richardson, but below Jackson Dart and Cam Ward. I think those guys have shown higher highs than we've seen from JJ McCarthy. There is no doubt he sucked in the first couple weeks, his first starts on his career for a Vikings team that I do really like that surrounding cast, but there was no Jordan Addison. These are his first games with Kevin O'Connell as they're trying to figure out what works best with him within that passing game. And the offensive line especially was horrible, especially to start the season with Darrisaw out. My opinion on JJ McCarthy hasn't really changed. You wish it would have risen with him playing better earlier in the season. That wasn't the case, but we were always talking about a 22 going on 23-year-old quarterback that hardly ever had to throw the ball at Michigan, coming off a knee injury. My opinions on JJ McCarthy really haven't changed. We need to see more, but this has been a bit of a confirmation with something I was critical on the Vikings of, by not pursuing more of a veteran quarterback, whether that was going to be an Aaron Rodgers or whether that was retaining Sam Darnold. There's a lot of veterans in that locker room that look around and see the coaching staff and see a lot of the talent on this roster. And you're seeing even with a Carson Wentz, they're getting more adequate NFL offense. Imagine if they had an Aaron Rodgers or Sam Darnold in there, or hell, if they even just brought Daniel Jones back, who was in that locker room last year, was getting familiar with this offense. Hitching their entire season to the idea that JJ McCarthy was just definitely going to be good, the Vikings deserve criticism for that. But it is kind of turning into some unfair criticism of JJ McCarthy as we talk about who he is as a player. So we should get to see him come back next week, and I hope that he's able to get that arrow pointing up. All right, Joe Burrow. The injury stuff is starting to get exhausting, but the dude's an elite quarterback, man. I think when he's out there, he's the only quarterback I would say sees the field even at the same level, if not better, than Dak Prescott. The accuracy, especially with Joe Burrow, that playmaking, pocket feel, the way he can navigate pressure and get you that 3rd and 9 conversion when you need it for your team because you're in a shootout 36-30 like this team is every single week. I love Joe Burrow. It was devastating to see him get hurt again this year. And then Joe Flacco, the other Joe in Cincinnati now. Dude, I've been blown away with Joe Flacco. I mean, he has clearly played at this tier 3 level in these 2 games for the Bengals. Curious to see if he can sustain that. And maybe if we do this towards the end of the season, I put him up there with old man Rodgers, who he just went head to head with. But we also saw him playing in Cleveland this year where things weren't as pretty. I'm definitely prepared to put him in the fringe starter category, though. And I begged this question to Ravens fans this week, and Ravens fans tended to agree with me that this is the best regular season football Joe Flacco has ever played. You're seeing that veteran presence. Stepping in 10 days notice, just in full control of this offense, getting rid of the ball, avoiding mistakes, especially, which has been a big drawback of Joe Flacco. That's where I'm a little bit, scared and hesitant, certainly, to put him higher. Is dude, it feels like regression is coming with him, who's, Joe's just been this turnover machine for years. But right now, you can't argue with the tape. He has been awesome since he arrived in Cincinnati. I just wish it was more than a 2-game sample size so that I could put him higher. All right, Joe Milton. He's got to go right next to Jalen Milroe. There's not a whole lot of evidence of good quarterbacking from Joe Milton other than Week 18 last year. He did step in and have a heater of a game for the Patriots, which ended up the Cowboys showing some intrigue to make him a backup QB. Some of the most absurd traits you'll see at the QB position. He might have the strongest arm in the NFL, and he's very fast. But just might be the most inaccurate quarterback that we talk about on this list. It's good to see that the processing for him has taken a step up from what it was coming out of that, just horrible to watch Tennessee offense. Anybody that follows college football knows what I'm talking about. We don't need to get into it with Joe Milton, but that wasn't real quarterbacking, and it seems he's taken to NFL coaching, and he's a fascinating player. So he goes in the tier 6 of interesting prospects. Okay, Jordan Love. He kind of has stayed in this tier 3 of good quarterbacks for me. He's an interesting guy because this is only his 3rd year as a starter, so the sample size on him is still really small. This has been the most stable start to a season for him, year 1 as his kind of rookie season, if you will. That was an interesting year where he was, pretty poor to start the year and then finished the season as a top 5 QB by any metric you want to look at. And the film showed a top 5 QB for the last 9 weeks of that first season for Jordan Love. He gets the big contract extension off the heels of that. And then last year, clearly the knee injury cost him some games, cost him his mobility and his throwing platform for multiple weeks. Started to play better as the year went on. He wasn't bad last year. He was low, bottom of tier 3 type of guy last year. So I would say he had last year was, he was QB 18. And in his first year, he went from QB 28 for the first half of the year and then QB 5 for the second half of the year. So he's just kind of been all over the place. This year, it's been much more stable. I think you're talking about a guy that has extremely underrated processing because people see the occasional aggressive mistake from Jordan Love that resembles something Jameis Winston would do. Those get pushed to the forefront. That's not emblematic of Jordan Love's tape for the most part. He's always middle of the pack in turnover-worthy play rate. He makes a lot of high-level pro reads, getting through his progressions, all that stuff. And his pocket presence and his athleticism has been a big addition to his game compared to last year where he couldn't move as well. He's had a lot of great plays with his legs. He's got a lot of great traits. I think the main thing, frankly, that keeps him out of tier 2, outside of just you want to see that full season of great quarterback play, obviously. But a reason we haven't seen that in many ways is the accuracy for him. He continues to be near the bottom of starting quarterbacks in terms of if it's 3rd and 8 and I need my QB to hit a deep out or hit a deep post or hit a go ball, Jordan Love's one of the least trustworthy guys in the league in terms of can he hit his target. It's by far the biggest detractor in his game. So I wish he could clean that up. Until he can. I just don't know if he's going to climb up much higher than where I have him right now. But a lot of the great stuff he does with the processing and the pocket presence and the athleticism, give him a really good floor as a tier 3 guy. Josh Allen, I mean, we're not really here to debate if Josh Allen is an elite quarterback. It's more of, is he the best quarterback in the league right now, or is he the second best quarterback in the league? I mean, I don't think you guys need a whole lot of Josh Allen as elite analysis here. Josh Dobbs, I'm going to put him as a standard backup, not a quality backup. He had that fun run in 2023, but it fell off. I think this is the right spot for him. Justin Fields, look, let's be real. He's not a starting quarterback. He's not a fringe starter. He's not a quality backup. He is a tier 7 quarterback. The fascination with him has completely worn off. His biggest issue as a quarterback has turned into my nickname for him. It's Justin Can't See the Fields. I'm going to put him in tier 7 as a lottery ticket QB and a standard backup quarterback. And if you're arguing otherwise at this point, you got to let it go, dude. Like, at some point, you have to throw the football to your wide receivers when you play the quarterback position. The main thing with me on Justin Fields is, like, what do you want to do at this point? Do you want to be a Josh Dobbs, a Cooper Rush, and go contract to contract as a backup? Or do you want to actually help a team win and go convert to a running back or a Taysom Hill type of role where you can put your athleticism to use? If I'm his agent, I'm proposing that option to Justin Fields as this season ends after the Jets, I would presume, release him. Okay, Justin Herbert. Herbert's playing the best ball of his career, in my opinion. I think the main difference with him is he's clearly comfortable with this Chargers team in a way that he hasn't been before, and I think that has specifically led to a huge gain in his game, using his legs more. Anybody that's seen any of these tier maker videos from me over the years, that's the main thing I've said with Herbert. He's been overly robotical at times. When he does extend plays and manipulates pressure, he's been good at it, but he just has been so inconsistent at doing so. This year, it's been in there. When they've needed a play from Justin Herbert, he's been able to give it to them really consistently throughout the year. The offensive line has taken a drop back. The defense has had major struggles. I'm extremely close to putting Justin Herbert in the elite category. I still think if you're talking about getting up another tier here, there is an element of like playoff success, sustained play at that level that Justin Herbert just doesn't have yet. But I'm closer to saying Justin Herbert is a tier 1 QB than I ever have been. I'm going to put him at the top of tier 2. Okay, Kirk Cousins. He's a tough one to say because, last year he was playing the first year off the Achilles, then he gets benched. He had some good games, he had some bad games. It's hard to know necessarily where he's at in terms of the physical ability. We know what Kirk Cousins is mentally speaking, and I'm pretty comfortable putting him in this tier 4 fine QB category. There were some moments with the Falcons where he looked a little bit washed, but then he would turn it around and have a pretty good game, mostly against the Bucs last year. He threw for 750 yards in his 2 games against the Bucs. If you wanted to say he was more of a fringe starter, I could understand that. But I don't know, kind of a gut feeling. I think Kirk Cousins still has a little bit in the tank. Kyle McCord, he's an interesting prospect to me. Even though he didn't make that stacked Eagles QB room, he's been on their practice squad. If I'm like the Jets, I would steal Kyle McCord, bring him back to the New York where he played Syracuse. I would much rather see what Kyle McCord has to offer when he had a very interesting trajectory. You can go check out my QB rankings video from this pre-draft process. I hated that he landed with the Eagles because he was never going to get a legitimate look with Tanner McKee and Jalen Hurts ahead of him. But I liked Kyle McCord coming out. I had him as kind of a third-round type of prospect, and it's fitting. He's right next to Milroe. Even though they were drafted in different spots, I had those guys neck and neck in terms of my QB rankings. I can't remember who I had higher. I think I might have had 5A, 5B with these two guys. I think I even had McCord higher than Milroe, so we'll put it there. It's not that big of a deal. You get the point. All right, Kyler Murray. I still see Kyler Murray as a good tier 3 quarterback. he gets a lot of crap for the height and some of the inconsistency issues. And I get it. Like, there are some games from Kyler, and it's like, dude, throw the football. You're not seeing the field all that well. But there's some exceptional high-end games in there from Kyler Murray as well. And I think this year, actually, the tape shows a quarterback that's playing better than he's getting credit for it. He was let down by his wide receivers a lot to start this season, in a way that those receivers have been making huge plays for Jacoby Brissett. And now the narrative has shifted in the last couple weeks where it's like, oh, Jacoby's better than Kyler. I'm not in agreement with that. I still think Kyler's like an adequate passer and an elite athlete that elevates your run game, kind of like Jalen Hurts in many ways. And Kyler is exceptional in terms of like pocket presence and extending plays and all that stuff too. So he's not a perfect player, but he's definitely still a tier 3 franchise quarterback for me. All right, Lamar, elite, you know it. I am and we can just do Mahomes so we don't have to, come back to this. I am a Mahomes 1, especially as he's gotten back to playing like the old Patrick Mahomes this year. I'm a big Mahomes 1, Allen 2, Lamar 3, Burrow 4. But heading into the year, I talked about this where, like, in years past, it was kind of like Mahomes 1A and then the other guys were like 1B. I think this gap is closed, and it's largely because I think Allen, Lamar, and Joe Burrow have raised their game up, and Mahomes has come down slightly, right? Though this year he's playing at that super high level. But let's just get those top 4 QBs out of the way there. All right, Mac Jones. I think Mac belongs in the fringe starter category with Jacoby and Joe, who also are playing well in kind of reserve starting roles, if you will. I'm going to put him above Jacoby and Joe Flacco. I really think Mac is playing well. And with a larger sample size, maybe we even put him into tier 4 with like Kirk Cousins and Daniel Jones. I think he's damn close to that, frankly. He's not making spectacular plays or showing off incredible traits or anything like that, but he's playing with anticipation within that offense. He's largely taking care of the football. He's run that show efficiently, as you could have hoped for. So he definitely deserves some love. Then you got Malik Willis right there with your Joe Milton, Jalen Milroe, these incredibly athletic. Milroe was a 3rd round pick. Milton went a little bit later, but the idea that, okay, if the super scrambler can figure out how to throw consistently, you've got a super weapon at QB. I'm going to put Malik Willis in that tier 6 of interesting prospects ahead of those other 2 guys, because Willis actually got 2 meaningful starts, not to take away from what Joe Milton did in week 18, but it was a meaningless game against, a Bills team that had nothing to play for. That was his 1 start, whereas Malik Willis had to step in when Love went down and won a pair of games and started to make some throws to help the Packers win those games against the Titans and the Colts. I think he's shown some interesting signs in his development. And honestly, just looking at this, I think I'm gonna push Davis Mills below. If I were ordering this in terms of just how I believe in these interesting guys, I would go Willis, Mills, Milton, McCord, Milroe, just to keep those in the order that I want them. And we'll see if any of these other guys get into that little cluster there. Then we got Marcus Mariota. He's interesting because he's played very well as the backup for Washington. It's a very great scheme for him in that kind of pistol, air raid, spread him out style offense. He's flirting with fringe starter. It's tough because I do have Jimmy Garoppolo in that tier. And we haven't seen nearly as much from Jimmy Garoppolo in the last 2 years as we have from Mariota. But still, in my heart of hearts, I still think Mariota is more of a true backup. Whereas, if the season ended and someone still wanted to make Jimmy Garoppolo a bridge starter, for one reason or another, in my heart of hearts, that makes more sense to me than going with Mariota, who I think has just found a really cozy spot as one of the better true backups in the league. All right, Mason Rudolph is a decent backup. I don't know if I'm fully ready to say he's a quality backup like these other 4 names. I'm going to put him in tier 7, but he goes near the top. He actually had some starts for the Titans last year once they benched Will Levis, where he actually kind of got that offense to wake up a little bit. And I was like, okay, Mason Rudolph, there's some life for him. But I haven't been the biggest Mason Rudolph fan over the years. All right, Stafford, he's like the signature tier 2 QB, like throughout time. Anytime I say, what's a tier 2 QB? It's Matthew Stafford. He's not a tier 1 guy, but clearly it makes his team better. He can put you in a position to win a Super Bowl in a 10-year window, all of it. And he's still playing at the level he's always played at, coming off a hell of a game against the Jags as well. So I'm going to put him behind Herbert. And honestly, I'm going to actually put him behind Dak as well, just because Dak deserves that love for how well he's playing. But with Jaden having some hiccups here in year 2, I'm going to leave Stafford pretty comfortably there. All right, Max Brosmer, I had to include him in here just as an interesting undrafted pickup. I had said if anybody has a chance of being this year's Brock Purdy, it was going to be Max Brosmer. I wonder if we ever see him this year with, Wentz being Wentz, always prone to injuries at any given time. JJ McCarthy's been banged up. I thought Brosmer was a good point guard style prospect that should have been drafted, and he ended up making this Vikings team out of camp as an undrafted player. I think he's a name that should at least be on people's radars. Though realistically speaking, probably should be considered more of a lottery ticket like a Justin Fields, as opposed to more of a legitimate, interesting prospect. So I'm going to put him just at the bottom there, just for simplicity's sake, but a name to know. Okay, Michael Penix. What do we do with Michael Penix? Has he played well enough in stretches to be up there with Bo Nix, Caleb, and Bryce Young out of that draft class? Or is he more closer to your Cam Ward and Jackson Dart and JJ McCarthy? It's probably realistically somewhere in between the middle there. Coming off a really frustrating performance against the Niners, he's tough because Penix has truly shown some high highs and some low lows. I do worry about the accuracy. I worry about his play extension ability and pocket presence. And the processing hasn't been great. I'm more comfortable here with him in tier 5 with the Cam Wards and Jackson Darts than I am with the Calebs and Bryce Youngs right now. I think he will climb out of it. But we got to see some more consistent play for him. I just haven't been particularly impressed by him this year, other than that one Commanders team against a Commanders defense that has been nothing short of booty cheeks this season. All right, Mitch Trubisky. We're going to put him right behind his predecessor, Justin Fields, as a standard backup. He's settled into that role in Buffalo. Quinn Ewers. He's a lottery ticket. I would put him right there with Max Brosmer. I had these guys rated pretty closely coming out. He's gotten some buzz in Miami. I think it's more desperation buzz. I'm not a believer in Quinn Ewers, man. I think he is the definition of a guy that just does not pass the eye test. And when you talk about that it factor for a QB, he has the opposite of an it factor. He has a not it factor. We'll see if his pro career ages differently. And at least maybe the one positive for Quinn Ewers is like we're seeing that maybe that Texas infrastructure wasn't quite as good as we thought it was, with how much Arch Manning has struggled. So maybe he overcame a little bit more than we gave him credit for there in Texas. But I still saw some pretty damn frustrating tape. I compared him to like the college version of Derek Carr, where he'll make 8 great plays in a row, and then there's one play where it's like, what the hell was that? Either a big overthrow on a third down or taking a sack where he just didn't see a guy coming. There's just frustrating moments, to say the least, with Ewers. Riley Leonard goes at the very bottom. I don't know that I will have a lower ranked quarterback here. I included him because he was a rookie drafted this year. But I certainly did not have a draftable grade on Riley Leonard. I would anticipate he is playing in the UFL here pretty soon. Russell Wilson. Man, he's leaning more and more towards just being a backup and probably having to retire soon. I don't know who's really viewing him as a starter, but I think you still got to put him in this category. I would put him above Jimmy Garoppolo, but he's not playing, with how amazing Joe Flacco's looked the last 2 weeks and Jacoby. I think you got to put Russ behind Flacco. And hell, the Bengals could have gone and traded for Russell Wilson. They chose to trade for Joe Flacco. It goes to show you that's kind of where we're at with those guys. Sam Darnold, dude, where do we put Sam Darnold? This is a tough one. I mean, he's playing brilliant football this season. I think with some of there's still in the back of my mind, and I think most people's minds, like gonna be that fear that sloppy Sam could show up at any given moment. And I was as high on Sam last year as anybody, but still, what we saw at the end of that Viking season was tragic and tough to watch. And this year, he has largely not been that guy. This recent week against the Texans, there were a couple of sloppy Sam moments, though, and it's just like every time that happens with someone like Sam Darnold, it's going to be amplified compared to a mistake from a lot of these other guys because of his history. So he's a tough guy to evaluate. I think I like him where I have him right here, above Jordan Love. Jordan Love and Sam Darnold are extremely similar quarterbacks in my mind in terms of strengths and weaknesses. Even their physical traits, I think, are very comparable. Darnold, I think, historically has been more prone to mistakes. Love, I think, is less accurate than Darnold. So it's not an eye-to-eye comp, but I think having those two guys neck and neck right now makes sense. If Darnold can shake off that Texans game, though, and get back to the level of QB he played in the first 6 weeks, there is a world where we come back here in this video in 6-7 weeks from now, and I said 6-7, didn't I? But we're talking about him as a tier 2 guy, because for the majority of this season, that's where he's played. But we'll drop him there. That feels good to me. Then Sam Howell. I would drop him into the lottery tickets category. He actually reminds me a lot of Drew Lock, which is funny because they were both in Seattle recently. Drew Lock is there now. But yeah, he likes to run around. He's got the traits. He's a good scrambler and all that. But the all-overedness in his tape is extremely frustrating. Okay, Shedeur Sanders, an interesting prospect to me. I will put him below Dylan Gabriel as he has lost that job to him. I think some of the maturity concerns, whether it's the speeding tickets or trying to do TikTok videos with Joe Flacco or the mime commentary, and then, of course, how the entire pre-draft process was handled. There are concerns there. I don't know how you could say otherwise. His tape at Colorado was still pretty good tape, like late first, early second round tape. Him as a prospect reminded me of like Kenny Pickett. And then he falls because of the noise surrounding him, of course. And then he falls because of the noise surrounding him. Once it became very clear that no one was drafting him to be a starter, no one wanted him as a backup because of all that noise. So that's what leads to him being a 5th-round pick. But I still would not mind to see Shedeur on the field. There's aspects of his game with his ball placement, especially, and some of the scrambling ability that there's potential in there for at least a capable NFL starter. Then Spencer Rattler, who has had a fascinating season, has certainly played better than certainly I expected, and I think most people expected. Other than this last week against the Chicago Bears, a brutal performance, 6 turnover-worthy plays. I think he has played well enough to come up into this tier 5 of like fringe starting options for your team. He's very clearly been at that level for the Saints. It's just a matter of like, how much does he continue to climb here? I'm going to put him, obviously I think I'm gonna put him below JJ McCarthy, but actually above Anthony Richardson. It's not like Rattler has no traits, and he's already shown a better understanding of the passing game and certainly better accuracy than Richardson has. Okay, Tanner McKee, he is maybe the most interesting prospect of the interesting prospects. Someone that I think fell in the draft much further than he should. This guy has a cannon arm. He was a good processor at Stanford. He's played so well for the Eagles when he's had an opportunity. Now it's a dream situation, obviously, getting to play in that Eagles offense. But I think there's something there. He's a cancer survivor, clearly has taken the right strides in his NFL development. I would want to roll the dice if I'm in, I keep coming back to the Jets or like maybe where the Saints were at like coming into the year. If you find yourself in that spot where you just want to kind of roll the dice, but you don't really want to draft a QB high, you want to build up the rest of the team, Tanner McKee screams fascinating dart throw to me, and that's what this tier is all about. Teddy Bridgewater, love Teddy. Really hope he goes the coaching route. I can just picture him as a offensive coordinator and then a head coach one of these days. As far as on the field play, we haven't really seen much from him. I certainly wouldn't consider him a quality backup until we see it. But I'll put him like above Jake Browning and below Josh Dobbs. Feels about right to me. Trevor Lawrence, another one of these polarizing quarterback conversations. Look, he's still a tier 3 QB for me, but he's getting lower and lower in this group. I'm going to put him above Aaron Rodgers, but that's the only QB in that tier I'm going to go below with Trevor Lawrence on. The passing game inconsistencies on him are infuriating, and it's largely accuracy issues, but there's some really shaky decisions that show up. The pocket presence is iffy as well. So he can still make a lot of big plays happen. He can have some great games, but he can have some stinkers in there as well. You know, there's parallels to Kyler Murray and sometimes Brock Purdy as well, where like these guys have shown some really high-end games, but you're going to get some bad play in there as well. But you put it all together at the end of the season, and you're still talking about a pretty good quarterback, even if they're more of the streaky variety. Trey Lance. I mean, he's also one of these extremely interesting guys. What we saw from him in the preseason, getting coached by Harbaugh, very fascinating to me. At the same time, we saw him get to play a little bit in Dallas, and it was pretty rocky. I kind of believe in the idea that he's starting to figure some things out. He was so young coming into the league, had hardly played any football, and the football he did play was at North Dakota State. Obviously goes in the top 3 of the draft. I think Trey Lance and Tanner McKee are probably the top 2 names that you hear of in terms of like, oh, let's take a dart throw on this guy. Let's see what he has to offer. So I'm going to put him up there right behind Tanner McKee, who I really do believe in. All right, Tua Tagovailoa. He's tier 4, bordering on tier 5. He has been so bad this year. It feels like we're heading towards a benching for him. And then it's going to be interesting with Tua. If he ends up getting released in Miami, what happens next? Does he consider retirement because of his concussion issues? If nobody views him as a starting option, which I think is very realistic, because I think there is a fear that if you bring him in to be a starter, you know, his season could end at any given moment when there's other options to pursue a quarterback in that kind of bridge QB territory. So things could get interesting in a hurry. Once upon a time when he was throwing for 5,000 passing yards, getting the Dolphins to the playoffs, I thought he was legitimately playing at a tier 3 quarterback level. But right now you're not seeing the high end from Tua, and the interceptions haven't stopped. So I'm going to put him below Daniel Jones, but above Kirk. But even then, I'm even more tempted to like drop him down into the fringe starter category. But I'll put him in tier 4 for now. All right, Tyler Huntley. I don't think we've seen quality play from Tyler Huntley in a long time. He seems to have fallen off as like one of those quality backup types. I don't think he stinks. I think, you know, him and Teddy Bridgewater, probably putting those two guys next to each other, because once upon a time you would have looked at those two guys as two of the best backups in the league. Not so much anymore, I don't think. Tyler Shook, I think you got to put him in the interesting prospect category as well. I'm going to put him actually below Tanner McKee, but above Trey Lance. That's just kind of my gut feeling, belief level in these guys. I do really like Tyler Shook, and I liked him coming out as a fascinating day 2 draft pick, and that's exactly where he went. And Rattler you can see with Rattler playing, you can see how Rattler just won that job from a rookie quarterback. I don't think that has to be a huge indictment on Tyler Shook, but at some point I would like to see Shook play in New Orleans, I think, just because they did spend a top 50 pick on him. Otherwise, you know, they might get to the draft and want a new quarterback, and it's like, well, what was kind of the point? Interesting prospect is the right place for him. Tyrod Taylor, I think he's probably still a quality backup, which is where I've always felt about Tyrod. He's had his fair share of moments kind of stepping in and looking pretty good. It's going to be tough with this Jets team, especially like last week, no Garrett Wilson. So if he plays poorly, we'll probably jump him down here. But I'm going to put him at the bottom of the quality backup category. Then we have Tyson Bagent. Talk about a guy that's gotten some limited looks and looked all right with it. He's got some intrigue, and he got a decent contract extension this offseason. It's kind of funny that we're considering him here with Mitch Trubisky and Justin Fields, all these Bears quarterbacks. I think I would put... I don't think Trubisky's looked horrible in the looks he's shown as the Bills' backup. I'm going to put Bagent right there, although Bears fans are going to see that and probably want him above their 2 former QBs. All right, Will Howard. He's still a lottery ticket to me, but he is a fascinating lottery ticket. I'm just going to put him there above Teddy, who I don't really know where he's at this stage in his career, and below Josh Dobbs, who's a little more of a streaky type of backup. But what I always said about Will Howard was, if you just watched his regular season tape at Ohio State last year, you're probably talking about an undrafted quarterback. But what he did in the playoffs was honestly insane. Like, he completely turned it on. He was seeing the field. He was driving the ball downfield. He showed some underrated athleticism. He got drafted off of that, national championship run where he legitimately played like a capable pro prospect. So there's intrigue in the sense of, like, is that who he is or can be, or what, did he just get hot and played well at the right time? All right, Will Levis, he still needs to go in the interesting prospect category for me, just because we know how bad the Tennessee situation is. He has crazy traits. I mean, like, him and Joe Milton are kind of in the same breath of, like, if they figured it out, you're talking about a superstar, but that's a major if. I'm going to put him above Joe Milton. But yeah, he doesn't see the field as well as Davis Mills, and Malik Willis in 2 games last year, showed better play than we've seen from Levis, really. And then Zach Wilson, I'm also going to put him in this category as well. Someone that, dealt with being a New York Jet. Obviously, it's not great that, like, he's lost that job in Miami as the backup to Quinn Ewers. I don't know how much of that is they view Ewers as, like, the rookie that maybe could save their job. But that definitely has led to me getting some less intrigue on Zach Wilson. I've kind of had him circled over the last calendar year as maybe someone like a Sam Darnold, Geno Smith. We saw the Baker revival. We're in this era of the, rehabbed quarterback figuring it out. I still think there's some flashes in there with Zach Wilson. I'm going to put him in the very bottom of tier 6. But that is our final list. You guys will have to let me know in the comments down below how you think I did. There's always going to be disagreement when you're putting all these quarterbacks into clusters like this. But this is where I'm at right now. I'm excited to make a new list in like 2 months, because we are constantly evaluating these quarterbacks, reassessing their standing in the NFL. But this is as of our approach to week 8. How I feel about these guys. Please do hit that like button if you haven't already. And again, subscribe if you enjoy the Tier Maker content. That's all I've got for you here today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and see you later.